What's up, y'all? So all those pictures you just saw, the common theme of all of those fish, they were all caught on 6-pound test line or under, an ultralight casting rod, and a BFS reel. And even though I've caught a bunch of big fish over the past several months on BFS, there's two fish that linger in my mind that, one, broke me off, and two, pulled me down into something and I couldn't get it off and ended up breaking the line. And it just made me reflect and think about some things that I maybe could have done better to get those fish in the boat, because it's never about the ones that you land and you get to see and take pictures with and show off to everybody, right? It's always the ones that get away, that kind of haunt you and make you want to go back for more each time. So I've got 7 things here today that I'm gonna go over that I've learned while using this light tackle technique on how y'all can hook fish, keep them on, and get them in the boat without breaking your line. So the first thing that I had to come to grips with is that for most of my other techniques when I was using conventional tackle, I would just tie a simple Palomar knot. It seemed to do okay and get me by with most applications. But what I've actually switched to using this light line is a cinch kind of knot that I think works a lot better. And I'm gonna do my best to try to show you all this knot right now, but I'll tell you the exact name of it, and y'all can look up other videos of it, and they'll do a much better job showing it to you with better lighting and slowing it down and stuff than what I can do for y'all. But it's called a triple Pitzen knot, and I learned it from Bass Fishing HQ. And it has not let me down at all. I have not broken off from the knot since I started using this. And that goes for if I snag a bait and I even pop it. It does not pop at the knot. It pops somewhere up the line where the line's been weakened. So when you tie this knot, you're gonna start it just like a Palomar knot. You're gonna go through the eyelet and you're gonna come back through the eyelet, just like when you start a Palomar knot, guys. And you're gonna run this to where you have a nice, big, long tag end like you do. You're gonna keep your 2 fingers on those 2 pieces of line here, and your 2 fingers there. So after you've passed that through the other way, you've got your index finger and your thumb on the end here, and you've got your index finger and your thumb on the tag end and the main line here. You're gonna create one big loop. You're gonna pinch both of those pieces with your left index finger and thumb. Take the big tag end here, wrap it around 1, 2, 3 times. And then with that loop that's back up by your fingers, you're gonna pass that through that loop. I take my teeth because this line's so skinny and hard to manage. And I kind of cinch it up like that. I make sure the knot has kind of gotten closer, approximated there. I wet the line so you don't fray it as you pull it tight. And then you have a triple Pitzen. But then you also end up with 3 tag ends that you need to clip. There's 2 tag ends here that you clip. And then this is always the one, don't ever, it's easy to cut the main line when you go to cut this 3rd tag end. Just make sure you got the tag in. And then you clip it off there. And you end up, but that is a cinch knot. The tighter the line tension goes, it just gets more snug. And there's 2 points of contact on the tie point there. It's just a really, really strong way to connect your baits, guys. Hasn't let me down. Try that out. So the second talking point is line quality and line care. So when you're talking BSF fishing, especially for me, I'm always fishing in between like 4-pound test and 8-pound test, and most commonly right in that 6-pound test mark. Just the 6-pound test is most versatile. It's probably what I use the majority of the time. But with that light line, guys, you have to make sure you check your line all the time, especially in the part that's being casted the most, you know, the last 10 feet of your line. You've got to feel for it. You got to feel for nicks and frays. If there's any nick or fray, you have to cut it off and retie. You cannot risk it. If you're throwing 15-pound tests and you got a little bit of a fray, it might take it down to 8-pound test. You can still get away with that. You can still catch a few more fish on it. If you're using 4-pound line, like I'm using on this little jerkbait, and there's any little nick or fray, and I get more line tension, it's gonna pop. Because I mean, you're down to 1-pound test, something like that. Anything that weakens the line integrity, you gotta cut it off and you gotta retie. You will be retying more often if you wanna land fish using light line setups. And if y'all don't want to burn through a ton of fluoro and help extend the life of your line out, this goes for braid and mono as well. If y'all want to extend the life of your braid, mono, and fluoro, this Real Magic stuff, it does a really good job of reducing line memory. And between every trip that I just take my Real Magic and I take 1 or 2 little bitty sprays like that, and it'll extend the life of my line out a lot longer than without using it. And it really does help improve your casting distance too, guys. So that's another perk of it. Third point is tuning your drag. So make sure before you even throw your bait out there, you firm your drag up and you kind of get that feel for how much tension does it take to peel drag out. For me, I've learned over the last several months just kind of generally where that needs to be for each one of my 4 reels that I have. But you want to make sure that it's just a smooth, firm tug out like that. You cannot have it tightened down a ton to where it really takes a lot of pressure to pull your line out like that, because as soon as you set the hook, you're going to pop it a lot of the time. It's got to be back down, and it's got to be just a smooth, steady pull to get that line off. It can't be so loose that you can't get the hooks in the fish on the hook set, but it's got to be that sweet spot, and with time, y'all will figure that out. And something too, another tip for y'all, I ruined several drags early on in career by just leaving them cranked all the way down when I would store them. Anytime y'all get done fishing, make sure you loosen your drag back up and store it that way. Don't leave it cranked all the way down. So the fourth talking point on landing big fish on BFS tackle is keeping your hooks sharp and managing your hook sets in general. A lot of times you're using little bitty treble hooks and little single hooks. You gotta make sure those hook points are pretty needle sharp, and if they're not, that one right there is pretty dull. I should probably change that little back treble out. They gotta be needle sharp, especially in the wintertime now, guys, because think about it, if you leave a football out in the freezing cold when it's 30 degrees out, it gets hard as a rock, right? Well, if a fish is sitting in 40 some degree water all the time, their mouths get harder. And you really do need a sharper hook to get in there, get the hook past the barb and get it to stick. And then on the talking point of the hook sets, it's pretty obvious, but if you're using an ultralight rod and a BFS reel, you cannot reel down and just hammer into a fish like what you're able to do on conventional tackle. If you watch me set my hooks in most of my videos, guys, I'm reeling. I feel the bite, and then I literally just use my left hand only, and I lift. It's just like a quick lift, and that hook and that fish is pinned 9 times out of 10. If y'all can get away with it, try to use exposed hook tactics when you're using real light line like this. But even like the little Texas rigs and jigs that I use, make sure that the hook guard or the non-exposed part of your hook isn't buried down in there too deep, because you're not going to get a lot of leverage and help from your rod here, guys, with non-exposed hook tactics. So just anytime you can use as close to an exposed hook as possible, do it. Number 5 is just more of like an angling technique. It involves anticipating what a fish is going to do once you hook it, and then directing it so that you keep that fish on the line. So when you hook that fish on your light rod setup, guys, and you're close to any kind of cover, whether that be rocks, brush, a dock, you have to anticipate where that fish is at and where he's probably thinking he's going to run to get the hooks out of his mouth, and you have to try to redirect that fish as quick as you can away from that cover. Because if you let a fish start heading in a direction that it wants to go, especially if it's a big one, you cannot redirect them on this. So you almost have to like preemptively show that fish where to go, and anticipate if there's something big and thick that they're gonna run to, you gotta get them away from it quick, ASAP, because if they get in it, you're probably not gonna get them out. All right, so point number 6 involves something that you can do to help supplement your drag. And what you're gonna do is you're simply gonna chase the fish. If you're on a boat, if you're on a kayak, if you're on a paddleboard, literally go after that fish. If it's a really big fish, like those carp or the drum or the catfish that y'all see me catch on these, literally go with that fish. Because if you sit there stationary and just rely on your drag alone to help peel line and let that and fight that fish, it's gonna be a lot harder to land than if you actually go in the direction with the fish so that it can't just peel a ton of line off of your reel. Because BFS reels, guys, you don't have a lot of line to give. And if it spools you and you get down to your tying point, you're SOL. So if you got a really big fish on and you don't want to lose your bait, you need to try to go after it. If you're on the bank, literally chase it. Walk with the fish as much as you can to help increase your chances of getting that fish on the bank and landed for you. So point number 7, the last point, and it's probably the most important point doing any kind of angling, whether that's saltwater, freshwater, BFS fishing, power fishing, whatever you're doing, all it involves is keeping pressure. Always keep pressure on the fish. Do not let it get slack in your line. One of the most common times that a fish is going to be able to get slack in your line is when you've got it up close to the boat or the bank and you're reaching down to get that fish and lift that fish. One thing that's beautiful about a BFS rod, guys, is when I lift up and I keep tension on that fish, that rod just doubles over and it keeps that springy tension on the line the whole time. To where when I'm leaning down like this and if that fish kicks around a little bit, that parabolic bend in that rod just keeps that hook in their mouth. So make sure that's one time that it can really kick and put some slack in your line and get off. But just always keep tension in your line. It's no different than any other style of fishing in that regard. And just be patient. You cannot horse fish on these setups, guys. You're using literally rods that are lighter duty than a spinning rod. So do not horse them. Be patient. Let them fight. Let them float up and lip them. And I wanted to quickly tell you all the 2 stories of the fish that I think got away that I could have done something a little different on. One involved me not having my drag tuned. I ran from one spot to another. I picked up a new setup that I was gonna use. First cast it, I threw it out there. I didn't really have the drag cranked down at all. I hooked the fish, it slipped. And so then, you know, I was like, oh, I panicked. I cranked it all the way down and was fighting it. It got right up by the boat and dug really hard. My drag didn't give at all after I'd cranked it all the way down, broke me off. Always have it pre-tuned. And the second fish was just kind of, I really don't know if I could have done anything different because I was fishing on Eagle Mountain. I threw my jerkbait between 2 rocks. I hooked that fish. He ran out and I directed him out away from the rocks. He got out in front of the boat and went to go to deeper water and I was just keeping pressure on him. He dug down enough that I think there was a submerged brush pile down there. He got into it and I couldn't get him out and he ended up breaking me off. Sometimes throwing these BFS setups, guys, is like Russian roulette, especially when you're around really big bass like I am in Texas. But at the same time, I think I get bit more often. And I really do think there is something to these big fish and them wanting to bite those little baits over like conventional size baits. So I'm gonna keep doing it. Use those tips and I'm gonna keep trying to refine my technique. If there's anything that I left out that you guys think that I could do better to land more fish, you just let me know. Or if there's something obvious that I left out, let me know. I will be back on the fish next week. I'm gonna be hitting them hard. Being inside for a week is killing me. I got to get out there and catch some fish. So we'll see y'all back soon. Thanks for watching as always. Subscribe, like it if you want to, and we'll catch you on the next one.